Next we have the Senufo, and we're in Western Sudan, or roughly Western Sudan. Most of their art is going to be tied specifically to community life, and in this case, in the form of masquerades. Now, masquerades are this very wide-ranging term. It's pretty much any time we're using or we're seeing the use of masks in some kind of dance or ritual. It's a very broad definition. And masks are a common feature among the men in initiation and socialization rites. In fact, male initiation will take about 20 years. And the maskers also perform for other public events. We tend to see large masks, which are a composite of animal features. The masks are meant to incarnate ancestors and bush powers to combat witchcraft and sorcery. They fight evil with aggressive, powerful forms and medicines. At funerals, maskers attend the corpse and expel the spirit from the village. Also, we see them used extensively in coming-of-age ceremonies. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things with these masks. First of all, generally these masks are made for a single use. They will be used for a single ritual, for a single person or event, and then they will be discarded and remade. That's because they believe that the spirituality, the power of the mask is kind of worn out after that single use. There are also elements that are applied to them. Some of these masks will have blood or some kind of blood substitute like iron oxide applied to them to give them an element of power. And that ties it to a specific ritual. So we see them generally used once and discarded. That's why we see so many of them. The coming-of-age ceremonies are going to be particularly important because when we talk about coming-of-age ceremonies, that's generally passing down social roles as well as social mores and taboos. For example, the male may be expected within this group to be the hunter, and so has to be taught those skills. They may be expected to perform specific rituals, and they need to be taught those. But they also need to be taught certain taboos, things that they should never do, how to handle a body, for example, or how to handle sexual relations, or how to handle the taboos that we know about, but we're never really taught. For example, not to have relations with blood relatives. So all of this would be passed down through these initiation rites, which can take a considerable amount of time. All of these lessons are usually tied into stories that are passed down and then unwoven on the other side. Think of Aesop's fables, where there's always a moral to the story. There's always a point to the story. Same thing is happening here. The piece we're actually looking at is known as the Beautiful Lady Mask. And this is based on a hornbill motif. The men dancing in female masks also wear knitted bodysuits. They may be called beautiful ladies or pretty young women or wife of one of the heavy masculine masks. And these are the sort of masks that in 1906, a young Spanish artist is going to look at in the Trocadero Museum. And it's going to change the art world. In fact, this should look familiar. This is going to be one of the basis, not this mask specifically, but these types of masks will be the basis of Cubism. The young Spanish artist being Picasso, who's going to see these out of context for the first time. So the mask has several elements to it. For example, we have the hornbill, which is going to symbolize the mask. It tells us exactly who the character is, who the person is who is represented, person, God, spirit, etc. We see a series of lines on the face. Those are lines of scarification, something very common amongst this group. We see the elongation of the face. more than likely stylization based on the other art that we've seen, and the enlargement of the forehead, focusing on the idea of wisdom being depicted through that enlargement. So a lot of ideas going on here. And these would have been very important for the specific ritual. But again, when they're discarded, they tend to be picked up and brought to the West, or at least in the 19th and 20th century, they tend to be picked up and brought to the West. Most of the masks that you actually see today are tourist pieces. They're being done specifically for the tourist market or for the export market. Very rarely do you come across actual masks used in ceremonies at this point in history.